My name is Claire Morgan. I'm 32 years old, and the day everything in my marriage shattered didn't start with yelling or fighting. It started with the sound of twisting metal and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. The rain had turned the road slick, and when the truck beside me swerved unexpectedly, my small car spun like a leaf caught in a storm. I remember the screech of tires, the violent jolt, and then silence, so loud it felt unreal. By the time the paramedics pulled me out, my hands were numb, my hair was stuck to my face, and I could barely tell if the shaking in my body was from the crash or from pure fear. When they wheeled me into the ER, the bright lights burned my eyes. A nurse asked gently, "Is someone coming for you?" I nodded automatically, because that's what a married woman is supposed to say. I believed my husband, Daniel, would rush to me. I believed I mattered enough. With trembling fingers, I called him. My voice was barely stable as I said, "I had an accident, can you come pick me up?" His reply wasn't a call. It was a text. A cold, casual text that might as well have been from a stranger. "I'm at lunch with my female best friend. I can't just leave." For a moment, I thought I read it wrong. My vision blurred, not from the pain in my ribs, but from something deeper. Something far older than the accident. I typed slowly. "Okay," even though nothing about it was okay. The nurse returned, expecting reassurance. I forced a smile I didn't feel and said, "Someone is coming." No one came. Minutes bled into an hour. An hour bled into 2. Every time the ER doors opened, I looked up instinctively, hoping, then pretending I wasn't hoping. That was the moment I understood what kind of place I held in his life. But miles away, in a warm restaurant filled with laughter, a police officer was walking toward my husband's table, and the words he spoke would make Daniel regret every second he left me sitting alone in that cold hospital hallway. I sat on that air bench with a thin blanket around my shoulders, the kind that keeps you warm for only a moment before the cold finds you again. My fingers kept brushing the bandage on my arm, tracing the rough edges just to remind myself I was still here, still breathing, even if I felt half erased. Around me, families moved like little worlds of their own, husbands guiding wives by the elbow, daughters holding their fathers' coats, friends rushing in with worried eyes. Every time the doors opened, hope jumped in my chest before reality slapped it back down. Daniel wasn't coming. He was choosing someone else. Again. It wasn't the first time, not really. His female best friend, Lila, had always been harmless, according to him. Like a sister. "Don't be insecure. She needs me." But the truth was simpler. I had spent years watching him light up at her messages while mine went unanswered. I had watched him cancel our anniversaries, but never their lunches. I had watched him defend her tears while dismissing mine. And now, sitting here bruised and alone after a crash that could have killed me, it hit me like another collision. This wasn't new behavior. This was the pattern. A nurse eventually sat beside me, her voice gentle. "You're shaking, sweetheart. Are you sure no one can come for you?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The shame was a weight I could barely hold. I hated the idea of explaining that my husband had chosen a social lunch over my life. So I whispered the only lie that made the pain quieter. "He's on his way." But inside, something was starting to crack. Something old. Something tired. Meanwhile, Daniel was laughing at a table across town, clinking glasses with Lila like the world was gentle and uncomplicated. But fate has a habit of delivering messages at the perfect moment. Because while I sat alone in that hospital hallway, a police officer stepped into that same restaurant, scanning faces, checking names from a report taken at the accident scene. And when his eyes landed on Daniel, everything began to shift. While I sat in the ER hallway tracing the lines of the tiled floor, unaware of anything except the dull ache in my bones and the sharper ache in my chest, the universe was already setting the next scene in motion. Across town, the restaurant buzzed with warm chatter and clinking silverware. Daniel always chose places with dim lights and soft music, the kind of places where he felt important, admired, seen. And sitting across from him, as usual, was Lila, tilting her head, laughing a little too sweetly, brushing her hair back in that slow way she knew he noticed. Daniel checked his phone once, not to see if I was okay, but to silence the notifications so it wouldn't interrupt their lunch. "She'll be fine," he said casually, slipping the phone face down on the table. Lila smiled, relieved to have his full attention again. This was their rhythm, her adoration, his eagerness, and my place always somewhere behind both of them. But fate doesn't care about rhythms. It only cares about truth. Just outside the restaurant, a police cruiser rolled to a stop. Officer Ramirez stepped out, holding a small notepad filled with details from my accident report. He wasn't looking for trouble. He simply needed a witness statement from the spouse listed on file. The hospital had tried contacting Daniel after the paramedics noted his number, but he never answered. Now it was the officer's turn. He walked inside, eyes scanning the room. The hostess pointed toward Daniel. "He's been here a while," she whispered. The officer noticed the half-eaten dessert, the wine glasses, the relaxed posture. The kind you have when your world feels safe. He approached the table slowly. "Excuse me, are you Daniel Morgan?" Daniel blinked, confused. Yes? Is there a problem?" Officer Ramirez lowered his voice, but every word carried weight. "Sir, your wife was in a serious car accident. The hospital has been trying to reach you. She's been waiting for hours." Lila's smile collapsed. Daniel's face drained of color. And for the first time in years, he realized something he had never once considered. I had finally stopped waiting for him, but now the world had stopped waiting for his excuses. Back in the ER, I sat with my hands clasped so tightly that the bandages crinkled. I didn't know what was happening at that restaurant. All I knew was the hollow feeling in my chest, a quiet certainty settling like dust. This was the last time I would ever wait for Daniel to choose me. A nurse handed me water, and when our eyes met, she seemed to understand more than I said. "You don't deserve to be sitting here alone," she whispered. The words almost broke me because they were too true, too simple. Too far from the life I had been living. I checked my phone again. Nothing. Not a missed call. Not a message asking if I was okay. Only the earlier text, cold as winter air. "I'm at lunch with Lila. I can't just leave." I realized something painful but freeing. I had been making excuses for him for years. Every dismissal, every forgotten promise, every time he put me second, third, or last. I had smoothed it over with love. He never returned with the same weight. The accident didn't break anything new. It only exposed what had been cracked for a long, long time. When the hospital discharged me, I requested the fastest release they could legally give. I didn't want pain meds. I didn't want a wheelchair escort. I just wanted out. The cold evening air hit my skin like a wake-up call. Instead of calling Daniel again, I opened a rideshare app and requested a car myself. As I waited outside under the flickering streetlight, the truth settled deeper into me than any bruise. If someone truly loves you, you never have to convince them to show up. On the ride home, the driver glanced at me through the mirror. I must have looked fragile, seatbelt trembling against my sore ribs, but my voice was calm when I said, "Just take me home." Outside the window, lights blurred like watercolor, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about the silence between me and my husband. I wasn't abandoning my marriage. I was walking away from a lie. And this time, Daniel would feel my absence long before I ever needed his presence again. By the time I reached home, the bruises from the accident felt tender, but the bruise on my heart felt older, as if it had been there long before the crash, just waiting for me to notice. I moved slowly through the house, taking in every detail, the photo frames he always angled toward himself, the throw blanket Lila had given us that he insisted on displaying, the scent of the cologne he wore only on days he met her. None of it felt like mine anymore. None of it felt like ours. I sat on the edge of the couch and whispered into the empty room, "I deserved better than this." And for the first time, it didn't sound like a wish. It sounded like a truth. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't wait for him to walk through the door with too late apologies. Instead, something clear and calculated began forming inside me, not revenge and anger, but revenge and clarity. Revenge that comes from finally choosing yourself. I unlocked my phone and opened my social apps. I posted a simple update on my story. Home from the ER. Grateful to be alive. No mention of Daniel. No blame. Nothing dramatic. But people who loved me, friends, coworkers, even my cousin who barely checks messages, started replying instantly. "ER? Are you okay? Where was Daniel? Do you need anything? Should I come over? Accident? What happened?" I didn't answer any of them. I didn't have to. Their questions became the mirror Daniel avoided. Next, I texted my closest friends and invited them over for dinner the following evening. I wanted laughter in the house, real laughter, not the rehearsed kind my husband and Lila shared over wine glasses. Before going to bed, I made one more move. I messaged Lila's longtime boyfriend, the one Daniel always pretended didn't exist because it made things inconvenient for him. I kept it polite. Just letting you know I was in a car accident today. Daniel was with Lila for hours. No accusations. No commentary. Just truth. And truth, when revealed at the right moment, can be sharper than any blade. My revenge had begun. Quietly, cleanly, and with the one thing Daniel never expected from me. Strength. The next morning, I woke up with soreness rippling through every muscle, but for the first time in years, my mind felt steady. I moved slowly, making coffee, touching the counters, studying the quiet of my home. It's strange how silence hurts when you're waiting for someone, and how peaceful it becomes when you finally stop. I showered, dressed gently to avoid the bruises, and prepared myself for the day ahead. Because today, I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. Daniel and I ran a small family business together, something I built with my own hands, and something he liked to claim credit for. And I knew exactly where he'd be at 9 a.m., the staff meeting. So I walked in, chin lifted, bruises lightly concealed, but strength radiating through every step. The team murmured the moment they saw me. I never missed a meeting unless something serious happened. Daniel's face went pale. He hadn't expected me there. He certainly hadn't expected me standing. "Claire," he said, rushing forward, voice low. "I was going to come home. I swear." I lifted a hand. "Let's start the meeting." People sat. Daniel hovered beside me, uneasy. He was waiting for me to cover for him, to protect him like I always did. But that version of me had died in the ER waiting chair. I started the meeting with one simple sentence. Family is defined by who shows up in your hardest moments. Silence fell like a stone. I didn't accuse him. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't mention the accident or the hours of abandonment. I didn't need to. The truth was already spreading through whispers from my friends online, through questions people had asked him when he came home late, through the worried texts he ignored for hours. Then the door opened. Lila walked in, carrying paperwork for Daniel, but when she saw me, she froze. Her guilt showed before her words did. She dropped her gaze, cheeks flushing bright red. The staff looked between her and Daniel, confusion shifting to realization. Reputations don't break loudly. They crack quietly, under the weight of truth that can no longer be hidden. And Daniel's carefully polished image had just begun to crumble. That evening, Daniel came home with flowers and shaking hands, the kind he only bought when he wanted forgiveness, without accountability. His voice trembled as he said my name, like he finally understood that something inside me had shifted in a way he couldn't undo. I watched him stand there, confused, afraid, trying to guess which version of me he'd come home to. But the truth was simple. There was no version of me left that would carry him anymore. "I'm sorry," he began, stepping closer. "I should have answered. I should have come. You chose," I said softly, cutting through his excuses. "And now I'm choosing too." He blinked rapidly, like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him. "Claire, I'll make it right. We can fix this. Please." His voice cracked at the end, but guilt is not love. Panic is not devotion. And flowers can't erase the sight of my own reflection in that ER window, small, alone, forgotten. I needed you when my car was crushed. I needed you when I couldn't stand without pain. And you were laughing over wine with another woman. My words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. Truth doesn't require volume. He reached for me, but I stepped back. For the first time in years, he looked truly frightened, not of losing me, but of losing the person who made his life easy. He tried again. "Tell me what to do." "You don't get to fix this," I said. "You don't get to rewrite what happened. You abandoned me, Daniel. And now you're facing what you built." His shoulders collapsed. The silence stretched, thick with the understanding that I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't punishing him. I was done. I grabbed my coat and keys. "I'm going out," I said. "Where?" he whispered. "To people who actually show up." I walked out without looking back. The night air felt cold but honest. I got into my car and drove toward a place where laughter waited for me, a place where my friends were gathered, ready to celebrate the strength they always knew I had. Daniel had chased comfort. I was choosing freedom. A few months later, I found myself standing in the same place where everything had started, beneath the soft glow of the garage lights at our business, sorting through old invoices and photographs. But this time, I wasn't shaking, bruised, or waiting for someone to choose me. I was steady, certain, whole. My life didn't snap apart after the accident. It quietly reassembled itself into something stronger, something mine. Daniel still tried now and then. A message asking if we could talk. A letter left on the counter. Flowers on random Tuesdays. But every attempt felt like a stranger trying to undo a story he never took the time to read. I didn't respond with anger. I didn't respond with hope. I simply didn't respond, because peace speaks louder than explanations. At the business, the staff began naturally turning to me with questions, decisions, ideas. Not because Daniel had stepped back, but because I had stepped forward. People trust those who show up. And I had shown up for them long before I learned to show up for myself. Meanwhile, Lila's situation changed too. Her longtime boyfriend confronted her with the message I'd sent. Lies unraveled, trust dissolved, and suddenly the lunches didn't look so innocent. She stopped coming to the meetings entirely. Her smile faded from the edges of our lives. Daniel had lost the illusion of loyalty he'd clung to for years, and he had no one left to blame for it but himself. One afternoon, as I stood outside watching the sun dip behind the building, Officer Ramirez passed by. He recognized me instantly and paused. "You look better," he said quietly. "Stronger." "I am," I replied. He nodded with a small smile, the kind given when someone has witnessed your lowest moment and now sees you standing taller. That evening, I drove home alone, windows down, cold air filling the car. No bruises. No waiting. No silence that hurt. Just peace sliding into the empty spaces where pain used to live. And as I stepped into my quiet house, I whispered one final truth into the soft light of my new life. Sometimes the real revenge isn't destroying someone. It's finally choosing yourself and never looking back.